My name is Dr. Ian Storch. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist and osteopathic physician, and you are listening to DO or Do Not. If you are interested in joining our team or have suggestions or comments, please contact us at doordonotpodcast.com. Share our link with your friends and like us on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you enjoy this episode.
For our fourth and final Osteopathic Medicine Month episode, we had the pleasure to host a special episode with Student Doctor Edith Waskel and Student Dr. Edward Ng. Edie and Ed are current fourth-year osteopathic medical students and soon-to-be graduates of the Western University of Health Sciences College of Osteopathic Medicine of the Pacific in Pomona, California. These two students couples match to the University of Illinois Chicago Emergency Medicine Residency program, where they will begin their physician journey as emergency medicine interns this July. Student Dr. Waskel will speak on her experiences and leadership roles within the Student Osteopathic Medical Association, a national not-for-profit osteopathic medical organization founded to ensure a high quality of education for osteopathic medical students, promote unity within the osteopathic medical profession, and improve the delivery of healthcare by doctors of osteopathic medicine. Student Dr. Ng is a first-generation American and college student, and he speaks on how his connection to medicine grew from his humble roots and desire to serve others. Student Dr. Ng also chose to pursue medical school leadership positions focused on healthcare policy and osteopathic political advocacy. As a medical student, Student Dr. Ng served on the American Association of Osteopathic Medicine's Council of Osteopathic Student Government Presidents, overseeing the Mental Health Awareness Task Force. COSGP is comprised of the student government and council presidents from each of the nation's osteopathic medical colleges and serves as the liaison between osteopathic professional organizations and all its students. Both of these awesome student physicians worked throughout medical school to pass osteopathic medical policy as well as help further and better the osteopathic profession. Let's now listen to their amazing journeys. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Do or Do Not. Today, we're welcoming Edith Waskel and Edward Ng. Thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast, as we want to spotlight you both during Osteopathic Medicine Awareness Month. You both are highly involved in advocacy for your fellow DO students in our profession. The podcast team would like to really thank you both for everything that you guys do. So welcome.
Thanks for having us.
So for the remainder of the interview, can I call you Edie and Ed?
Yes. Of course.
So first question, just tell us a little bit about the organizations you both are a part of and what you do within those organizations to advocate for students and the profession.
I can go first on this one. Throughout my medical school career, I started off with SOMA, Student Osteopathic Medical Association, and kind of served in a few different roles through that, leading into some national roles, including community outreach director. And then that propelled me into the AOA, or American Osteopathic Association. And currently I'm representing as the student trustee on the AOA Board of Trustees.
I was a part of COSGP, which stands for the Council of Osteopathic Student Government Presidents. It's an organization comprised of all the student government presidents and vice presidents from every single osteopathic medical school in the nation. In my capacity, I served as general council member, basically kind of part of this council that discussed osteopathic education and advocacy and policy. And then during my third year, I was appointed on the executive board as their national public relations and web person.
What motivated each of you to become passionate to advocate for us as medical students, as well as the profession? Did it happen during medical school? Did it happen before medical school? And what motivated you to join the organizations that you did, like SOMA, COSGP, and the AOA?
For me, I had no leadership experience prior to medical school, and I had never been a part of advocacy or policy. But when I joined medical school, I was elected class president. And as part of that role, I was automatically a member of COSGP. And so I was kind of thrust into the role. But as I went throughout the process and kind of went through to all the meetings, I learned that I really enjoy being that voice for my classmates and being that bridge between medical students and the profession overall. And so it kind of, made me motivated to keep doing it. And that's why I became an executive board member. And it's something that I didn't think I would end up loving, but now I feel like it's going to be a part of my career for years to come.
For me, I was not interested in politics at all. I came into medical school just trying to kind of encourage myself to stop extracurriculars, kind of just focus on med school. But obviously, there were other plans. Once I got here, I had a second year as an incoming first year who I looked up to. She was the national liaison officer for SOMA. And just through talking to her, she was the one who encouraged me to apply for the position that she had. She shared her experiences. And once I applied for it and attended my first DO Day on the Hill, which is where osteopathic physicians and medical students all advocate at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., that was my first experience with having any kind of political advocacy, with standing up for our profession as a whole, and just everything that I learned from that, everything that the AOA and ACOM helped with getting us prepared, finally learning about topics that are actually important to health education and continuing in our medical careers, and being able to advocate for that at the offices of different Congress people, whether that was in the House or in the Senate, talking to the staff members. So that was just an experience that really stuck with me. And I just wanted to continue to advocate after that. So working with other SOMA members, I moved up to work on National Resolutions Committee, where I got more involved in the resolutions that came through SOMA into our own house or into the House of Delegates for the AOA. And I guess just from there, I really enjoyed working with like-minded people. I know Ed has talked about this too within COSGP, but when you're really with other students who are motivated to work on the same projects as you or get to the same kind of outcome for the betterment of the entire group, it's just really vitalizing and encouraging. And from there, I think through my experiences in SOMA, I grew a lot as a leader, and I learned both from my own experiences and those who came before me. And I think that's what really pushed me to apply for the AOA student trustee position. It's a lot. There's a lot of other leadership titles within being a student trustee, and it's probably more than I realized it would be, but not in a bad way, in a way that I've been able to really work with a team at a higher level of cognition, I guess, and really just stretching myself and growing myself even further as a leader.
That's awesome, guys. I'm really happy that you guys both hit two separate points of views. One of you kind of being thrusted into politics and policy and advocacy, and the other kind of running into a mentor. I think that's what I hear mostly, either one of those two stories. So that's awesome. And thank you again for advocating so much for our profession. Now to just steer away from those types of questions and going into your paths to medicine. When and how did you know medicine was the career you wanted to pursue? And did you have any mentors or parents or family members that were in the medical field?
I guess I honestly went into college kind of thinking about medicine, but really focusing on wanting to help people. And I did have really good professors. I went to a smaller private university, so I got to know the faculty more on a one-on-one basis. And through talking to the faculty, I learned that there's a lot of different ways to help people in the health field. And I really love exercise and fitness. So originally I was thinking of maybe pursuing physical therapy or becoming a PT. And then I shadowed one in an inpatient setting and realized there's not a lot going on in terms of pace and just how many patients you're seeing at a time. And through finishing college, applying for medical school in the years afterwards, being a medical scribe during that time, I think that's where I really learned that I wanted to pursue medicine to its highest. I have a twin sister who ended up pursuing PA or physician assistant, and I joke that she made the smarter move because she got in and out really fast. But personally, I think the time, the dedication, sacrificing our 20s, it's all been worth it for me.
For me, I kind of knew I wanted to be a physician from a young age. I know it's kind of like the job that a lot of kids talk about. When you ask a kid what they want to be, they're either a doctor, police officer, firefighter, something, at least for little boys. But for me, my dad got sick really young, and I was 10 years old when he had a aneurysm that burst and became a subarachnoid. And as a kid, I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that my dad was sick and there were people in white coats who came and helped him. So for me, I've always wanted to be a doctor. And that dream kind of really didn't seem possible until I got into college and I actually kind of looked into what it was. And it was even harder because I had no mentors. My parents are both immigrants from Malaysia. The highest level of education they have is a high school education. And so even applying to college was a feat in itself because I had no one to lean on and I had to teach myself basically. But medicine was always that kind of dream career. And when they tell you that you have to be the best of the best to get into medical school, that was super daunting for me. And I almost gave up on that dream because I was afraid that I wouldn't be good enough. But I realized that you don't need to be the best of the best. You just need to work hard and you need to be passionate. And so for me, I'm glad I stuck with it because now I'm living my dream and I'm going to be a physician. So that's kind of how I knew medicine was the career for me.
I'd like to ask for the pre-medical students on the podcast where you both went to undergraduate school and were there any experiences that kind of led you into medicine? I know, Ed, you were just saying that you've always wanted to be a physician, but maybe Edie, was there anything in undergrad that kind of pushed you even more so into the medical field?
For me, I went to the University of Southern California. And like you said, Amir, I had a lot of experience with wanting to be a physician, but not a lot of experience in how. And so the thing that I was lucky in is that USC is affiliated with a very prestigious medical school and prestigious hospital. And so I was able to do a little bit of shadowing in the hospital, do a little bit of research in the hospital, and kind of get a glimpse into what it was like to be a physician. And so that's kind of how it shaped me and how it kind of helped me decide that this was a path I could go on. So I'm pretty fortunate that I went to University of Southern California for that.
For me, I don't know how many people will know about this college, but it's in Riverside, California. It's California Baptist University. And I had a lot of friends who were involved in the nursing program there. It's an excellent program. I was involved in a lot of music and outreach opportunities, but I did major in biology. And through that, like I said, I really got to know my faculty, and I do have to shout one specifically out. His name is Dr. Prinz. And like Ed, I really did not have any exposure to people in medicine. My sister and I were the first ones to ever pursue this level of education as well. So this was all new for us. She and I both went to college together and kind of helped motivate each other to pursue medicine. But in the end, we ended up choosing different careers within medicine. But Dr. Prinz was definitely the one who motivated me and encouraged me, even when I felt like, talking to the pre-med students, maybe you don't get the best grade in a certain class, but if you really push yourself and you have people who are encouraging you and helping point you in the right direction, Dr. Prinz would invite previous students who had actually been in medical school to come back and speak to us. So I think that was my first exposure to seeing an osteopathic medical student, and also just my first time ever really being able to see myself in that next step.
Edie beating me to the punch.
Ooh.
Next question about osteopathic schools and how you ultimately learned about osteopathic school and why you chose to attend a DO school rather than allopathic school. Just an aside, Ed, I did read on your social media that you were accepted into both.
Yeah, I was accepted into both. For me, it came down to family. The osteopathic program that I got into was 15 minutes from my parents' house. And with my dad being sick and all that stuff, I just wanted to be close to home. Versus the allopathic school I got into was in New York. And that was quite a trek. For me, I also knew I wanted to go into a specific specialty that was DO friendly, that I didn't see myself having a problem getting into as a DO. And so for me, it just fit for me to be at home, for me to be in this program that kind of has a philosophy of using your hands as well as a holistic approach. And then specialty selection was a big factor for me as well.
I'm going to be completely honest, and I hope this really helps encourage pre-med students to really still put themselves out there. I did not understand the whole process. I think this was my second time applying, so I tried to get it in a little bit earlier, but applying to med schools also costs money. So I didn't apply very broadly, and knowing who I was, really looking into osteopathic medical schools, it seemed to line up with the way that I typically run my own life, and just having that, thinking of the different pillars, how mind, body, and spirit are really interconnected. I take priority in each of those points in my own life. So it made sense to me to apply to osteopathic medical school. I did apply to my other school that I really wanted to go to was an MD school, and still seemed to apply those types of concepts, still had a lot of spirit involved in the way that they approach medicine. But ultimately, Amir, I was accepted to one school after being waitlisted. So there's hope out there, guys. Yeah, I was waitlisted for a while and finally accepted a few months later. And that's all it took. Med school became the next step of my journey. And now here we are.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. And Edie, being on a wait list doesn't say anything, and I can definitely second that. You have become one of the best advocates for our profession alongside the beautiful Ed. Love you guys and love what you guys do for us.
Thank you for calling me beautiful. Appreciate that.
Always, always. So just to go a little bit into more med student oriented questions, I'd like to ask how your experience was during med school. What did you do to motivate yourself? What did you do to kind of make yourselves attractive for residency applications?
So another thing that was kind of a surprise to me once I was in medical school was my interest in osteopathic teaching fellowship, which I was able to complete during third and fourth year, and it extended my medical school experience into a fifth year. So something that really stands out to residencies is a teaching aspect, right? So as a resident, you'll be teaching medical students. As a senior resident, you're teaching the interns that are coming in. So any kind of teaching aspect that you can include in your past experiences definitely stands out to residencies. It came out on every single one of my interviews. And it actually ended up being a huge place of friendship for me. So first and second year, really buckled down, created close friendships with a few people. And then obviously Ed and I met, and that created a strong relationship and strong person to lean on during tough times. But my friends within fellowship really created a natural mentorship where the fifth year fellows could help the third year fellows and kind of give them some insight into the application process for a residency, or if there were students interested in the same specialty as you, you could talk to them because they're already applying into that residency and they've already had audition rotations or just experience that you haven't had yet. So I think having that fellowship experience, teaching first and second years, the osteopathic techniques and philosophy not only helped me in my understanding of what it means to be an osteopathic physician, but also better prepared me to be one.
You kind of talked about what we did in school to kind of make ourselves seem attractive to residency programs, right, Amir? Is that kind of the question that you asked?
Yes, exactly.
That's a really interesting question because I feel like I didn't do anything in medical school specifically to make myself more attractive. I didn't do anything in medical school with the intention of, well, it's going to look like it's better for the residency programs. I think I just did things that I enjoyed. And for me, my experience in med school was, it was a very kind of interesting one because there were moments where I had really high highs and then there were moments where I had really low lows. And I think it was kind of this emotional roller coaster. My leadership experience was one of the best things I had, and my leadership experience was kind of integral into, how I would shape out as a future clinician. And so for me, highlights of my experience for sure. And obviously meeting Edie was great too, because I'm leaving med school with a partner. But overall, my experience of med school was kind of just working hard and trying to stay emotionally sane and afloat. I think a lot of people can kind of agree to that.
I definitely agree with that. That's awesome. Thank you. So just to go into some of the hot topics of what every med student would like to know, you both matched an awesome residency. You guys did a couples match, one of the hardest things to do, especially in emergency medicine, into the same program. One question before we start talking about couples match a little later, question that everyone asks is, did you take USMLE?
I took both, and Edie took both as well, and she can obviously give you her insight. But I took level 1, and then I took step 1, took level 2, and then step 2. I think for me, why I took it was because I wanted to have open options for residency programs, and I know that COSGP and SOMA have been actively working against that and fight. And now there's legislation and language that says that the COMLEX is equivalent to the USMLE. However, not every program believes that. I decided to take the USMLE just to be safe.
Yes, I took both exams, COMLEX level 1 and level 2, and then step 1 and step 2. And I actually took the level 2 PE as well before COVID started. And I agree. I think going into emergency medicine and being competitive also from California, it's just what the students do here, because we don't want to kind of shoot ourselves in the foot a bit. I do know from being involved in SOMA in other portions of the country, COMLEX on its own is more acceptable. But the culture here at our medical school, everyone just seems to take both. It's pretty rare to not take both. And honestly, I do believe there's a slight difference in structure of the exams. And then taking level 2 PE, I was able to experience that without any skin in the game, since I already took that and passed that. It wasn't part of contingency for me, but I did help advocate for that based off of the student voice across the nation. So that's what my position is as AOA student trustee, is to advocate for the student voice. And through working with both COSGP's e-board and SOMA's board of trustees, we were able to gather that information and bring that to both the AOA and NBOME in a professional fashion.
So just hearing from both of you saying that both of you took the exams just to open more doors for your residencies, did you have any sort of obstacles other than taking these exams during residency? Did you have any sort of discrimination or any obstacles that you had to jump over just being a DO student?
Well, I do know, since the DO discrimination is a huge portion of my role right now, it's reportable on the AOA's website. I'm having students who feel like they're going through discrimination copy me on those emails through my AOA email, just to keep tabs on that, because through VSAS, which is the Visiting Student Application site, if there's a rotation that's not available to osteopathic students just because they've taken COMLEX only, or that site just isn't taking osteopathic students, then that opportunity doesn't even show up to the osteopathic student on VSAS. It's not even listed as an opportunity. So we've been going on different websites to figure out which ones are not actually available to medical students or not. So I think there were some opportunities that Ed and I might have missed just because they weren't even listed for us on VSAS. But, I think a lot of times, being the only DO student that's on a rotation, sometimes you feel like you have to prove yourself a little bit more. I've had good experiences with my rotations. I've only had one physician kind of scoff or chuckle at me when asking what rotation I just came off of. And I said it was my OMM rotation, kind of basically thought I took a vacation for 4 weeks. But I don't know. Ed, did you have any specific examples?
I think that any hurdles that I might have faced were just placed by myself. Because here's the thing, right? It's not a secret that there is some discrimination against DOs in certain VSAS or VSLO rotations. And I think that there are still people who have stigma against us. But for me, it wasn't a huge issue because I just decided to show off and kind of just come in and put my head down and do work. And the biggest example I can give you is during my sub-internship or away rotation, whatever you want to call it. I did it at a pretty prestigious residency program. And I was a DO with a bunch of high-level MD students. And I think that for me, if no one asked me what school I went to, they wouldn't have known I went to a DO school. Because I think for me, my goal was to work as hard as I possibly could and to leave no doubts and to make everybody there go, whoa, he went to a DO school? They must be great. And so for me, obstacles, yeah, there are some, but for me, I decided to not even deal with those obstacles. I didn't have to worry about going through obstacles. I just went around them. And so I think that was the big deal. Step 1 and step 2 were obviously things that we had to do, and we kind of already talked about that. But other than that, when I was applying to residency, I got interviews from schools and residencies programs that I didn't think that a DO, would be qualified for. So I got interviews from programs that were at the number 2 hospital in the nation. I got programs that were huge county programs. So I think for me as a DO, it wasn't a huge issue. I just had to show up and work hard.
So just moving towards your specialty, both of you are emergency medicine. Just love to know what process you took to choose your specialty. Did you know from the beginning of med school that you wanted to do emergency? And if you had any other specialties that went head to head with emergency medicine as your top choice?
First of all, emergency medicine is the best specialty, period. I think I'm a little biased.
Agreed.
In that. I think I'm a little biased in that. But for me, I've always wanted to be an emergency medicine physician. I kind of came into med school with the intention of becoming an ER doc because so going back to my dad, right? So him and his many health problems, there were times where he got sick or had, a seizure or had a mini stroke, and I had no clue what to do. And I hated feeling like that. And I knew that from that point on, I wanted to be that doctor that no matter what the situation was, where we were, and who was, getting sick or who had an issue, I wanted to be that person that knew what to do next. I never wanted to be that person that froze. And emergency medicine is kind of that specialty that allows you to do that. Additionally, I grew up super poor, and I love serving the underserved because these are my people. And social medicine has become a huge aspect of my life. Emergency medicine is kind of that beautiful specialty where social medicine is ingrained in our specialty. For EM, we are the gatekeepers to the hospital. We really are. And so for a lot of patients, we are the first doctors they've seen in years, probably. And social medicine is a huge aspect of emergency medicine. So I couldn't imagine picking anything else. I will say that during third year, I flirted with the idea of applying to general surgery as well, but only because I wanted to do acute care and trauma surgery. But I realized that lifestyle wasn't for me. I respect everybody who's going into surgery, but that's just not for me. And so I'm glad I end up sticking with EM because now I have a residency position and I'm on my way.
I totally echo what Ed said about emergency medicine. Huge aspect of that is social medicine, and my work through SOMA for community outreach director just really showed me that I wanted to continue working for different people groups who aren't quite getting the medical care that they need, and maybe they only get that from an emergency department. So people suffering from homelessness, or a huge passion of mine is increasing education and awareness of victims of human trafficking and I think a lot of those types of patients come through without docs or nurses or medical staff really realizing it. So those are aspects that later on, once I figured out that emergency medicine is what I am pursuing, those types of things started becoming more evident to me. And it's something that I will continue working on as a resident. But for me, going into medical school, I stayed open. I did scribe for an emergency department for a couple years and then for a family doc for a year after that, before I had like a 3-year gap between college and medical school. And there were stark differences between the pace of seeing patients. The family doc that I scribed for, she was semi-retired and also loved geriatrics. And so she would have 45-minute meetings with her patients, and it was great to have the continuity of care. She really knew her patients, and that's something that we won't always have in the emergency setting. But man, I just really like the pace of the ED. It's just you see a patient, you're helping them out. There's a lot of really tangible results that can occur pretty quickly. And I kept my mind open going through medical school, especially on rotations. And I realized I like a little bit of each rotation. You know, I really liked OB-GYN. It almost pulled me, but I also realized I just wanted more variety. OB-GYN has huge variety. They're doing clinics and inpatient and surgery. You know, they've kind of got their feet in a little bit of everything. But for me, I still wanted to work on the front lines of social medicine and see a wide variety of patients. And you're really only going to get that through emergency medicine or family practice. And just knowing what I knew about the type of pace that I like and seeing patients, it resulted in still being emergency medicine.
You guys definitely hit that unique outlook on emergency medicine that nobody talks about when we're in med school or pre-med, that of social medicine and educating the patients. I love that. And, you know, we can't forget that both of you are meant to do emergency medicine and work in the emergency department. Both your names start with ED. Dad joke. So going on from there, I'd love to know how you both did the couples match, and if you could explain the difference between the typical match and the couples match, and what was your personal experience?
No, it is quite different. I think it's a lot of planning leading into, you know, where you guys would like to do your audition rotations. It's a lot of communication between you and your partner. Are you guys going into the same specialty or not? Are there hospitals that offer both specialties you might be interested in? If it is the same specialty, are you guys really going to aim for having the same program, or are you okay being in the same region? And Ed and I agreed initially, like, we were just fine being in the same region. We actually probably prefer that over being in the same residency program, just to have natural space and different stories when you come home from your shift. But something great about the residency program that we're going to, it's spread pretty equally across 4 hospitals. So we'll still have our own unique experiences while also going through with the same kind of community as we go through each year of residency. I feel like Ed did a really great job of setting up our couples match and rank list. So I'll let him talk about the actual process of it.
Yeah. So our couples match is a little different because we both went into the same specialty. And so if you think about the match, that's already a layer of complexity. When you do couples match, it's even more complicated because now you have to account for 2 people and the algorithm and all that stuff. But when you do same specialty, it gets even kind of harder because it's easier in the sense that you know exactly which programs you're applying to, because you don't have to worry about finding, you know, cities that have the same program, or the cities that have your program and your partner's program. When you're both going to the same specialty, you know exactly which programs you're looking at because you guys are both looking at the same programs. The difficulty comes in kind of deciding where you want to apply and then making sure that you get interviews in the same area. So where we want to apply, Edie and I sat down and we looked at databases for residency to kind of narrow down which programs we really wanted to apply to. So we went state by state, and there were certain states that we did not feel like we wanted to live in, and so we didn't apply to those. But there were certain states that we really loved, so we applied to basically every program in that state. So Illinois is a pretty good example. With the exception of maybe a few programs, we applied to almost every single emergency medicine program in Illinois because we really liked Chicago. And for us, that was kind of the big first step. Once we started getting interviews, we really advocated for each other. So there were certain programs where I had an interview and Edie did it, and I mentioned that my partner was also applying EM. And so that program ended up offering Edie an interview. And the same goes for Edie. She had interviews at programs that I didn't, and she mentioned my name, and then I got the interview. So a lot of advocation was going on. With people who are going into different specialties, that's still something that you can do. You can still talk to the PD or program coordinator of the program that you're interviewing at, and they can potentially reach out to the program director of the specialty that your partner is going into. And so again, communication and advocacy is really key, and that's kind of how you can maximize your chances. The final step of that is creating a rank list. And we went through our rank list over and over and over. There were several iterations of it. We had a big kind of poster board that we posted all our programs at, and it was a dynamic poster board. We kept changing the order, and eventually we communicated about where we thought we were going to go, where we would like to go, and we took into account whether each person liked the program more or less. And in the end, it all worked out because we matched at the same program. So that kind of worked out for us.
Let me also explain, and pre-meds and first years in medical school don't need to think about this quite yet, but when you make your rank list for match, you create it based off of the number of places that you interviewed. So let's say someone interviewed at 10 places, their rank list would be numbers 1 through 10, and that's it. Well, for a couple, it's every type of combination between the programs that each couple interviewed at. And each combination that is listed, for our number one, let's say I have place A and Ed has place B, they're not considered separately. They're considered as one combination. It's one rank list. So our number one is with A and B, both in that first line. So if A doesn't match me, but B is interested in Ed, then that first line won't work because of me having A as number one. So it can lend towards a huge list of varying combinations. And obviously the first few you're putting in the same region, same places, and then the lower on the rank list you go, the more spread out. So that's the way that Ed and I approached it. And ultimately it worked out.
I love how the conversation was started with giggles and sighs, just thinking about all the permutations y'all went through.
Oh, yeah. It was
that was rough.
So just going back into osteopathic medicine and being a DO and your education as a DO, what were your proudest moments during your education as a DO? Did you have any aha moments or any moments that you will brag on for the rest of your career?
Why don't you go first, Edie?
I feel like there's a few that stick out. I mean, I think honestly, being involved in SOMA, that's not ever going to go away. I'm sure that's going to lead towards lifelong friendships and partnerships. And I can't put one specific experience. I think just the experience of being involved in SOMA just really highlighted my medical school experience. I was always happy at our national conferences. It was a lot of hard work, but it was definitely worth it. My only other thing would be the fellowship. Like I said, I really enjoyed those moments teaching first and second year medical students when they're really not getting it. I switch up my teaching style, check in with them, and then they finally have that moment where they understand, or they got that HVLA thrust, they got the cavitation on it, like those moments, and you get to celebrate with your students in their successes. I think those are the two biggest points in my experience.
For me, being a part of COSGP was a huge accomplishment for me, being on a national leadership organization. And then matching at a really prestigious and historic EM program was really huge for me. But those are things that kind of, pale in comparison with my actual proudest moment, which is something that can't even be quantified, is that I'm a first generation student. I'm the first person in my entire family to become a physician. I'm the proud son of immigrants, and I am the first person in my family to go to a really high level institution, and then for college, and then medical school, and now I'm a doctor. And to me, that was my proudest moment, to know that the son of immigrants worked hard and did everything that he could to become a doctor. And that's kind of like my crowning achievement of medical school. And the fact that I got to be a DO was just a plus.
I love how both of you stumbled on trying to find that one thing, that one moment. But to talk a little bit more about some experiences you've had, some proud moments, I did pick, Edie, congrats on being Student Doctor of the Year. And, Ed, we talked a little bit about your award, the Lawrence Gossenfeld Award given to you by your school for service and academic excellence. I'd just like to give the audience a little bit of experience or whatever you had to do to become the student doctor to receive these awards. What did you do?
Well, oh my gosh, yeah. Well, thank you for pointing out becoming Student Doctor of the Year for my school. So, yeah, it was something that I'm definitely honored to receive. Usually what happens is someone from your school nominates you for this. So I was nominated. And once you find out that you're nominated, then you fill out an application. And basically, it's your entire CV all over again onto this application and an essay prompt. And for me, it was kind of a chance for me to talk about some of the experiences that I've been through, that I've in life gone through, even as med school was happening. So honestly, I think even if you go through tough times, if you are able to lean on those around you, you're able to succeed and you're able to come out of that. I think it takes a lot of grit and just a lot of leaning on those who love you to help pull you out of those tough times. And yeah, obviously it worked for me. And the fact that it was recognized was just a blessing on top of that. But being able to advocate for students, advocate for our osteopathic profession, but also be able to volunteer through free healthcare clinics, through being, like I said, community outreach director on the national level for SOMA. I think all of these things, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time out of studying, out of preparing for your classes, or maybe sometimes that you'd rather be hanging out with friends. You're on conference calls or at national meetings, and it can be difficult at times. I definitely felt burnt out, and I met up with my advisor, and she helped me realize, she's like, Edie, you're burnt out. That's what's going on. And once I finally realized that, I was able to kind of reset myself and through third and fourth year really excel. And so I would say that's what this award represents, being Student Doctor of the Year for my university, for my med school, really just encompasses everyone I was able to lean on and my journey through med school.
For me, this award was a huge surprise because you technically have to apply for it. And I wasn't going to apply for it because I'm not the type of person that tends to apply for scholarships or awards because I feel like I don't really deserve them. And it's this weird thing I have. But I went into leadership because I felt like I could make a difference, not because I was looking for any type of validation or reward. It wasn't until, my best friends and Edie and some of the professors kind of pushed me into applying for this award that I decided to do it. And to me, it just feels really good to be, I guess, recognized, because even though I said, you don't go into leadership and service to get recognition, to be recognized is still a good feeling. And this particular award is the highest scholarship value that our school gives. And so it felt really kind of nice to be one of the recipients of this award.
You both deserve it, and you deserve more. You guys are so humble too. So, talking about the future and your guys' future, do you guys think or plan to continue advocating for the profession and students after you graduate?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the perks of matching in Chicago is that all of the AOA, the AMA, the MBME, the MBOME, they all have headquarters in Chicago. And then even with emergency medicine, Chicago is a big hotspot for that. So I think Edie and I are in a prime position to continue our advocacy if we want to. I think for me, I would love to continue being an advocate for DOs and DO students, and especially the students, because I think that's kind of where our generation is headed. Like the ideas of the students now will be what's implemented in the future. So I think it's important for us to kind of foster that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for my experiences being both part of a student organization and being on that leadership, and now being on the AOA leadership and seeing the inner workings of this organization, it's been a great transition for me. It's been a great way for me to better understand the focus of students as compared to the focus of physicians who are a bit older, who have been in this profession for a little bit longer now, who have some wisdom behind some of the things that they're saying. But the students have such a fresh perspective and have a liveliness to what they're trying to advocate for. So I really enjoy seeing both sides of this. And I think moving forward, I'll be able to kind of keep that vitality in the way that I advocate, but also understand the patience and the foundational change that comes with having some experience, having some years in, like, kind of under the belt of being an advocate for the osteopathic profession. So I do hope to continue in leadership. So part of my position in being the AOA student trustee is I'm the co-vice chair for a bureau within the AOA, the Bureau of Emerging Leaders. And so I will be immediate past student trustee on that position. So I believe I technically have a leadership role this as an intern, and will be attending some of those meetings. But big passion of mine outside of student and profession advocacy is going to be advocating for my patients. And like Ed said, Chicago is a great place for that. And I've personally worked on a project of kind of streamlining education surrounding human trafficking victims and how we can better get them to the right resources and potentially rehab facilities, whatever they might need. And that's something that I talked about in interviewing with Chicago programs. And I'm definitely looking forward to including that in my advocacy efforts as well.
I do want to kind of go back a little to what Edie said. Edie actually mentioned feeling and seeing that she was burnt out. Just with that, I kind of want to get into how you both obtained a work-life balance, and was having a significant other in med school in addition to that.
So with having a work-life balance, like I said, the way that I lead my life, I do focus on mind, body, and spirit. So being active, being healthy is a huge part of my mental health. If I feel like I'm lacking in that in any sort of way, I don't have those natural endorphins. I don't feel like I've really given to myself. A lot of studying feels like you're kind of giving your time away. You're not, feeding into other parts like friendships or yourself. So for me, I had a best friend who enjoyed a lot of the same things as me. So we'd go work out together, or after a huge exam, we'd go do a swim workout and grab lunch together after that. So that was a huge part of me maintaining work-life balance. I also am a musician, and I stayed involved in an orchestra through a church that I attended during medical school, and it was very low key, very easy, just on Sundays and for Christmas and Easter concerts, 4th of July things. So keeping those things that were important to me really helped me balance those things out. I probably cared at the beginning, but once I realized it's kind of unattainable, I didn't care anymore about having top grades. Like, I definitely wasn't like last in the class. I put my effort in, but I was not as worried about getting A's on every exam or even B's. Sometimes, like, depending on how the class went, I honestly just did my best to understand the material to the best of my ability while still maintaining my own sanity through physical fitness and friendships. And because of that 5th year of medical school, I actually didn't meet Ed until I was an anatomy TA between 1st and 2nd year, and Ed was starting his 1st year. So I developed that friendship and continued that even as Ed and I developed our relationship. And just being in a relationship with Ed, honestly, like, we would study together, we were able to work out together as well. And just the more people that you can have kind of in that closely knit inner circle that you're able to trust and confide in, I think that's honestly the best way to have that work-life balance.
For me, work-life balance is something that I had to really work hard to kind of obtain. And it didn't always come to me because I used to study, and put off working out and eating healthy and stuff like that. And that was terrible for me. I would get, depressed and frustrated about it. And I realized I was burning out. And so for me, it was a lot of putting myself first and knowing when to take my foot off the gas pedal. That was kind of the best way to develop a work-life balance and to figure out what was important for me. And having Edie was a super helpful thing because having a partner that is also going through the same thing helps you deal with med school a lot better.
I think maybe what Ed's trying to say is you don't have to explain everything that you're going through because your partner already knows. And sometimes it's easier just to sit in whatever stressful situation it is without having to explain it or relive it in certain times when you have someone who understands what you're going through. And, you could just call it and say, hey, let's just go grab dinner. It's not sticking right now. Or just switch it up and create a quick little date night. A lot of our dates were study dates, but if you could create a little date night to get away from things, then that was a huge plus in kind of trying to balance things out.
That's not to say that it was always easy just because Edie and I were both in medicine.
Right.
Med school gets to you. It does. It gets to everybody at some point, I think. And the stress can sometimes be overbearing. And Edie and I have had our fair share of arguments and disagreements, but where having a partner in medicine comes in helpful is that we realize that, hey, whoa, this isn't us. This is the stress of med school talking. Let's take a step backwards and kind of figure out why we're so stressed out, and then we'll go from there. And that's been really helpful to have in a relationship, which is that understanding that it's not each other, it's just med school and we can work through it together, kind of thing.
Yeah, take that bigger picture in.
What was the one thing about you both, or you as individuals, obviously, that made you successful in your pre-med and medical careers? If there was one adjective to describe yourself or a superpower that you had during med school that pushed you through, what would it be?
Edie?
Oh, I definitely have a word, and I guess it's a superpower, but sheer grit. I think all it takes is sheer grit. It's not being the top 1% of your class, which obviously maybe that helps. I had a lot of friends who were just geniuses and class was very easy for them. That was not my superpower. That was their superpowers. But for me, it was just sheer grit. I think it's something I learned from my dad. Just, it doesn't matter how you feel about something sometimes. You just got to put your head down and do it. And a lot of moments in med school are kind of like that. So I would say that's honestly what really got me through those tough times.
I think for me, it's the one word I would use to describe my, quote unquote superpower is determination. I refuse to let anybody tell me I can't do something. And the only person that's going to beat myself is me. I think that people come into med school and they want to compare themselves to others because, the whole culture of comparing test scores, comparing board scores, comparing how many interviews did you get? Did you interview here? Did you do? That doesn't matter to me. I'm indifferent to what other people are doing because I'm really focusing on what I need to do to succeed. And so that determination has made me successful because, going into an OA rotation at a really nice hospital, I don't care who else is with me on service. We're going to be colleagues. We're going to be equals. I'm just going to work as hard as I can so that my patients get the best care that they can. And that success has paid off a ton. So for me, determination has been kind of that defining characteristic of mine.
Definitely motivating words. I'd like to ask both of you, if you had someone looking at little Ed and little Edie right before, getting into med school or the first day of med school, what piece of advice would you give your first year selves? What kind of advice would you give and motivation to kind of last through the 4 years of med school?
I would tell that person to just chill. I think if you can kind of see the theme of my advice is to have good mental health. And I think people come into med school all high strung and keyed up about, I need to do this and I need to do that. I need to get this score in order to match this specialty in this particular hospital to do this. And I think that's kind of how you burn out. And these type of people keep their foot on the gas pedal until there's no more gas. And they forget that med school is a marathon and it's not a sprint. And they run out of gas within that first year or even second year or, so on, but before they get to become a doctor. And for me, it's like, just chill. Know when to take your foot off the gas and give yourself some love and give yourself a little bit of time to yourself. Because if you don't know how to recognize that you need that time, it's going to be really hard for you when you're a physician, because if you can't take care of yourself, how can you expect yourself to take care of others, kind of thing? And my big piece of advice would be to chill and to relax a little bit. Med school's tough, but you'll get through it, and it's okay to love yourself.
My piece of advice would be to not sell yourself short. You have a lot to offer. You have your own personal background that nobody else has. You can draw from that in the way that you approach your patients, in the way that you approach your studies. Be open to new interests and don't shut things down before maybe trying out that opportunity. Obviously, if you think about stepping across a pond or a stream and there's rocks, you look for the direct path, don't go into a rock too far right or too far left, and it just kind of leads to a dead end. Like, keep your goals in mind, but don't sell yourself short. I would have never known that I was interested in advocacy if I didn't try something new, try something out of my comfort zone. So just recognize that you have a lot to offer and you are the only one in charge of that. Like, you're able to give or keep to yourself however much you choose.
Edie and Ed, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing your experiences. I can't wait to see what types of physicians you both develop into. I know you guys are going to be amazing ED physicians.
You're next, Amir. So yeah. We can't wait to see where you go.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there when I get there. But guys, thank you so much. And to the audience, please follow us on all our social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We do post a lot of relevant material and pre-medical and medical advice alongside our podcast episodes. Also, please subscribe to our Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as iHeartRadio. Please feel free to leave any reviews, or if you want to see a specific specialty or physician on our podcast, let us know and we will take that into account. Thank you all.
This concludes our episode of Do or Do Not. Send all inquiries, comments, suggestions, and even let us know if there's someone you want us to interview to doordonotpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Do or Do Not Podcast for updates. If you enjoyed our podcast, please share it with your classmates and administration. We have plenty of more interviews lined up, and we're excited to share them with you. This is Tianyu Shea. Thank you guys so much for listening to Do or Do Not.